All right.
Jim, would you like to begin with just a brief status on where we are and how soon we are to closing up?
Yep, I would. Good morning, Birch Bay community. Jim Karcher, Whatcom County Public Works. Just wanted to give you an update on the Birch Bay Drive and Pedestrian Facility, commonly known as the Berm, on the status of the construction effort with Granite. Okay, I've got some notes here, so forgive me, I'm just going to be looking down at my notes. So basically, when we think of the berm, there's a berm structure out on the beach, and that structure is 100% complete. All the work's done. It's been done for about 2 weeks. So that would be all the gravel hauling and everything to construct that berm feature. The pathway is also done. That is the gravel pathway and any ancillary items where we transition in and out of concrete walkways or accesses. And that was just recently re-rolled because we heard some people be concerned a little bit about the roughness of it. So that was just re-rolled by Granite to harden up that walking surface, that hardened crushed gravel surface. The plantings are the thousands of plants that we have out there. Those are also done. Those have been done for a couple weeks now, since the 12th of March. And then we do have a plant establishment period to go, and that is a 1-year period in which, let me just back up. And the planting, I think everybody is aware that the plantings are done as a mitigation to, as a requirement for the project as part of the permitting, that we have to make sure that we are, since we have modified the shoreline and the beach area, that one of the requirements was that we had to revegetate that in its natural state. And that's why all the plants are in there. And then to make sure that we have a viability that remains after we leave, there's a 1-year establishment period. And during that period, Whatcom County will have to work with Granite to replace any plants that drop below the mortality rate of, I'm not sure what it is exactly, it's a percentage, that just so many of those plants have to remain living to put us in compliance with this planting plan. And so what will happen in the next year is you'll see Granite out there weeding, watering. That's all part of the plant cost, that they have to maintain those plants for a year. And that year will give us the viability to know that they're going to live beyond the 1-year establishment period. So that's the big issue. I want you to know that Granite's going to be out there, but that will probably not involve any traffic restrictions or anything like that. They'll probably have a watering truck. They may be watering from the side of the road. The fencing. So we've got some construction fencing out there. That'll have to be removed, but the fencing is out there, and the construction fencing is the orange fencing, and that's to help keep the public and direct public to the access down to the beach and keep them away from the plants so that we can give them a chance to start and get going. We've also added some limestone recently to the shoulder of Birch Bay Drive in the area where, we've added some limestone access points to kind of accentuate where those access points are down to the beach from the Birch Bay Drive. So you'll see a different colored aggregate out there, the lighter, whiter colored limestone. And that gives you an idea of, hey, here's the beach access. And it's kind of a subtle indication for the public to help them get to know where these access points are through the plants. We've also added some limestone on the road shoulder of Birch Bay Drive in the areas where we had like a 900-foot area where the beach was already fairly established and the residents weren't willing to deal with the county on accommodating the berm through that area. That's north of Harborview. And in that area, we've added limestone on the shoulder to solidify and make that a more smoother walking surface of that shoulder, so that we have that additional access up and down there between the, we're calling it the little satellite berm to the north, where we finish off the project officially. Okay, some signing. Technically, we're not finished with the signing at all. We have signing to install yet, and that's going to be completed in the next couple of weeks. Or there may be some other things that Roland and I will be talking to you about on the signing for restrictions on the berm pathway. And we talked a little bit about the plan establishment period. I think everybody understands that we have that 1-year period. I'm looking at my notes here. Oh, and then the last item I have is, Granite's going to be pulling out here. So Danielle, they're going to be pulling out of the laydown area, and they're going to be returning items, I think, to the chamber maybe for the power. They had a power connection for their trailers there. So some of that, I think, either belongs to the parks or to the chamber. Mm-hmm. So we're going to be returning some items on that, and then they are going to clean up that whole area and make sure that it's as we found it or better. And that's your update on the status.
Thank you so much, Jim.
You bet.
Well, Danielle, would you like me to go through those questions that were sent?
That would be great. Do you want me to read them, or do you? I think Kathy's on here. She had a question. She may want to ask it herself. Kathy, do you want to ask the question that you had to Roland?
Are you talking about Kathy or Katie?
Oh, sorry, Katie.
Sure, I'll ask it. In front of where I live, Mariners Cove, so they have the fence, orange fence out there that will come down eventually. But what they haven't done, and maybe it's going to be done in the future, is put access points from the parking area to the beach over where the berm is. And I noticed some areas of the trail have real obvious access points where it's been kind of tampered down and it looks like actual pathway going down to the beach. So I'm wondering if they're going to do that at some point in this, probably one of the heaviest used beach areas in the summertime in Birch Bay. So that was it.
So, well, I'll begin, and Jim can add on to this. Some of the spots where we've added, as Jim mentioned, some limestone through the plantings was specifically to address the plantings being trampled. One of the things that we really need to understand is what the project is and what it is not. One of the ideas originally was to have a beach park all along this area where we're building the berm. That's not what is being built right now. It is a pathway and a soft shore protection of the road. So those access points that go down, those are really up to the private property owners. The vast majority of the beach, including in front of Mariners Cove, is not controlled in any way by the county. The path is not sitting on regular right-of-way. There is a specific easement that was purchased by each one of the property owners to reconstruct the natural beach and to put a path that is accessible to the public, but it's not right-of-way. So Public Works doesn't have the authority to put those kind of access points throughout to going down onto the beach. Any property owner can add those as appropriately allowed by the shoreline program. So what we've tried to do is to get access up onto the berm, and from there down, it's really up to each property owner or each individual. Once the plants are established, and what we're trying to do is with the netting and the signs and stuff with regard to the planning is to get those established for a year. That's our requirement. Once they're established, if you've ever been down to Ocean Shores or Pacific Beach, there's little pathways that go through the grass that people just use. And that's really what is anticipated here, is people will just start making their own path wherever they're going to go. That's where it's going to be. We were not allowed by the fact that we don't own the property, and we were not allowed by the hearing examiner for the shoreline permit to do anything more to get strollers or wheelchairs or anything off the berm towards the water. And so that's out of our authority. It's off of our property. It's off of the rights that we could do. So even if we had the money to do it, we're not allowed to. And so we don't want to do anything that's going to keep you all from doing it. And I know those orange fences certainly do that right now. That's obvious. But those orange fences there are because we're required to protect those plants for a year.
Well, I realize that. But there's a ditch. There's a ditch before you get to the berm. Even, let's say the plants are established, so you can remove the fence. So there's a ditch before the berm there. And so you have to leap over the ditch. And then people, you know, Birch Bay is kind of no man's land, and people are just going to trample the heck out of the plantings because there's no obvious access point for them to go down and enjoy the beach with their families and stuff. So not even Mariners Cove, just the general public. There's tons of parking over there, and this is a huge area where people come to enjoy the beach.
Well, we've had this request before, and Jim, I don't know if that is something that we could look at possibility and as a plant protection mitigation.
You know, Katie, I think that what, you know, respectfully submitted, what you see out there right now is what it's going to be. I don't mean to, you know, I don't know how to put that a little softer, but, you know, there's going to be some activity that moves logs around. There's going to be, you know, one of the areas in the Cottonwood area, I think what you're talking about is there's parking in there. And we did not want to remove any of the parking because that's a key feature of the Birch Bay community, that people can come out and park. So I think there's not going to be any additional work by Granite or Whatcom County to establish additional accesses down to the beach or accesses onto the berm from what you see right now. Does that help answer your question? Maybe that's not the answer you want, but.
Yeah, it's not the answer I want, because you know, I mean, come out here the 5th of July and see how people treat Birch Bay. So people are going to come here and they're going to ruin all this hard, expensive work that's been done if there isn't some way to kind of mitigate it so it's more accessible for them.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, now I know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Roland, do you want me to read the other questions to you so everybody knows what they are, and then you can answer, or do you want to just address them?
Sure. If you'd like to read it, then I'll go ahead and answer the question.
Okay. So Carol Donovan, I don't think she's on this call. If she is, she can correct me and jump in, but sent us some questions regarding the berm. The first one is the original published plan. The berm was going to extend to North Cedar Avenue. It looks like now there will be no pathway any further than the south section of Cottonwood Beach. Will the berm continue to Cedar Avenue, or is there a plan to construct a large enough shoulder on the west side of Birch Bay Drive between Cottonwood Drive and Cedar?
Well, first of all, the original plan goes back to 1975. And so it's kind of depending on which original plan we're talking about. The latest reiteration that we proposed had the walkway, the path go all the way to Cedar Avenue. However, several, if not the vast majority of the people that own the private beaches up there on the north of Harborview, including several of their attorneys, told the county that in no way they were going to sell an easement or allow for a berm to go through their private beaches. They did not want people walking through their property. And so we modified on their behalf the plan. And the part, what you see is the path goes up and comes back onto the road. And the second part of the question is, is there enough room on the shoulder to increase the path so that improved shoulder is wider and safer? One of the things that we have difficulties with is the road and the right-of-way. So the right-of-way is the portion of the property that the county has rights of way on, and there's a 60-foot swath through there. The road isn't in the center of that right-of-way. It goes back and forth. In some spots, the road is all the way up against the beach side. So there's no really room to add additional shoulder. But the main reason is we don't have approval to expand that shoulder unless we go through the shoreline program. And that comes with all of the things that we just went through with the berm. Whatcom County Public Works made the decision that we would do everything we can to maintain what's there, add some gravel to what's already there, but we cannot expand it without a shoreline permit. And we're not budgeted or prepared or have the capacity to go through another 2.5-year permitting process to increase that shoulder. It may be something that we can look at in the future, but it's not in the plan now. And that was a difficult decision. We went back and forth with that. We talked to the shoreline administrator about adding that to the shoreline permit as we were already going through the process. And it was determined that that would be just too much for the county to be able to go through right now. Just because we have the same logo as Planning and Development Services, Public Works gets more permits than anybody in Whatcom County. And we have to follow all the laws that any developer has to follow in developing their property. We don't get any kind of exemption or anything else. So that, excuse me, so that's a long-winded way of saying we tried, but no, there is no plans to do that. We try to get the mowers out there to knock the blackberries down as often as we can, and we try to make sure that the gravel's done out there. Our crew leaders travel through there. That's one of the things they know to take a look at, and if they see that it needs to be maintained, we try to get out there before we get into chip seal, which is the middle of the summer. Understanding that Birch Bay is the major urban growth area and the largest tourism area in Whatcom County, including Bellingham, we try to stay on top of that as best as we can, but we're limited to the road and the size of the road we have now. And that's an unfortunate thing that we don't like, but it is what it is.
I just wanted to say Carol Donovan is on the call. I just figured out how to unmute.
Oh, good. Do you want to ask the rest of your questions then, Carol?
Well, you're doing a great job.
Okay. The other question, or the other part of that question that you had on there, was that blind corner that's there and the number of vehicles that speed on Birch Bay Drive. And Derek Jones, our neighborhood deputy, is here on the call, and maybe Derek can talk to the speeding along Birch Bay Drive.
Yeah, we've had a few complaints there. Obviously, that section, especially between Birch Point Road, that it starts just past the village southbound. So we recently have been hitting that with our traffic unit, and there are plans as the summer picks up, and now the berm is pretty much done and people are out there a lot more. We'll be out there quite a bit working traffic control. So it'll be speeding. So make sure you watch your speedometers.
Well, thank you.
Of course. And we have a traffic line. So anytime there's any kind of parking or traffic questions, you can look that up on the line online, or I can give that out. It's 778-6665. Of course, that's 360. And then that's the Whatcom County traffic line. That goes to a voicemail that you can leave for our 5 traffic units that work, and they can address any problems. But of course, my email is up too, and I'm happy to facilitate that.
Thank you.
I just put that number in the chat. I hope I jotted it down correctly, but it's there for you guys. And then Derek, if you wanted to put your email in the chat there too. I always do the long one, not the short one. So
Okay.
Put that in there, that would be great. So the other question, we've got a few questions here.
Danielle, I'd also like to let you know that we will be, where our plans are to put the radar speed sign, the trailer out there again. That backfired on us last time. As some of you that live on the north end know, there were a couple of individuals who were using it as to kind of see how fast their car could go in a quarter mile, and using that sign actually to see how fast they could go. So I have suggestions my family coming from the Ozarks on how to handle those little boys, but I won't say that since this is being recorded, and anything I say will used against me in a court of law. So on behalf of Derek, you know, please utilize that traffic line. Public Works will do what we can, but we will not, and I'll just say it straight out, we will not be putting speed bumps to launch people into people's living rooms, because that's exactly what will happen if we put any kind of speed control out there. The city of Bellingham has run into that, and other jurisdictions run into that, and our traffic engineer has been emphatic. No, we're going to get somebody killed if we put a speed bump up there. The honest people slow even farther down, and the ones that are not honest crash. So all I can say is I really feel for you out there, and we are doing what we can, but we have to make sure it's really safe.
Roland, I want to tell you that it's not only cars that did that, because I live at North Cottonwood. Bicycles, the kids were backing up and seeing how fast they could ride their bicycles.
I wonder how fast those little kids can ride their bikes.
Well, we had a bicycle built for two that did it over and over again to see if they could get up to 25.
Sounds like we have a Birch Bay Day competition coming up.
Yeah, and it wasn't me. It wasn't me and my tricycle.
So I'm sorry, Danielle, go ahead.
Okay, no worries. So another question from Carol. The north section of Cottonwood Beach, a public beach, no longer has direct access to the beach. Even though there are openings in the parking area wall, there is no way to get safely to the beach. The only way is to walk through the recent plantings and over huge logs. Those of us with limited mobility have not been able to get to the beach for months. Is there a plan to put public access to the beach, which we talked a little bit about already, but maybe you can address the logs that are in that area?
Yeah, that area, specifically because I know one of the people that live across the street. Hi, DORALEE. That was something that the design engineers and Jim Johannesson, who's a world-renowned geomorphologist, and I looked at that. One of the commitments we made is to not remove any parking stalls. And we were unable to break down the seawall and do it in a way that will to have enough room to do any modifications in there. So we're kind of stuck with the seawall. And as far as adding paths, just like we talked about before, that wasn't allowed. And there's a lot of amenities that could be happening in that area that are not allowed because of deed restrictions. So we looked at the best thing that we could to get done that would maintain the integrity of the drift cell. And the drift cell is the movement of the tide, you know, downstream, as it were. So as Jim said, what's there is what's there. Now, addressing the significant number of logs, that was not caused by the improvements in the reconstruction of the beach. That was caused by a tremendous amount of logs that came into Birch Bay. And there was a lot of logs that came into Birch Bay. I don't know if a big jam came out of Fraser or out of the Nooksack or from the San Juans, but this storm dumped logs all up and down. We got them on Gulf Road. We've got them up Blaine, Birch Bay, and so on Lummi Island, same sort of thing. And we are not removing the logs. And this kind of goes right into the next question, which was about the boat launch that's right in that same area. We didn't do anything to the boat launch. We didn't take it out, destroy it, or anything else. It's covered in logs right now. And that is a function of the wave action and the wind and the amount of logs that were in the water. So if someone's down there and they want to move a log out of the way to drag their kayak down the boat launch, Public Works has no opinion about that. Logs are controlled by, I believe, DNR, but it's not Whatcom County. Someone else may know actually who has the authority of driftwood, but Public Works is not part of the project, and that's where that sits.
Okay, but the issue is that Cottonwood Beach is a public beach. And so it would seem that the access to the beach is not governed by private beach deed. So why can't some access to the beach be put in? I mean, we've lost total access to the beach.
Well, before there was riprap, and all we did was extend the beach part. So instead of crawling over riprap, you could walk over the small berm that's there. There's no pathway on top of the berm. Again, we can't address the logs. And if the Park and Recreation District wants to do improvements in that area, they can get the shoreline permit to do that. The project is a road project. It's not a park project. And that's one of the things that's hard to distinguish, because there is several things that lead this to be a great amenity for recreation, but that's not the primary purpose of it. That's not what was permitted, but it is how we got it built, because at 13 million plus, the general fund and the Parks Department in no way could have done any of this work. So we were able to add to it this pedestrian element, which made it legal for the road funds to be utilized to do this transportation improvement. With that, there's some restrictions on us utilizing it for recreation. Your taxes that you spend for road purposes are not being used for recreation. And that's the bright line. Now, that's just what I'm saying for Public Works. That doesn't mean Parks or the Park and Recreation District or some special district that Birch Bay would like to put together to do the park amenities couldn't do access down to the beach. Get the shoreline permits to do that, and we would applaud you to do that. And for someone who utilizes Birch Bay with my grandkids, I would like that too. It's just not for this project. So I'm not saying no, it can't be done. I'm just saying it's not tied to this project.
Got it.
Roland, this is Whatcom County Park Beach. Would it be Whatcom County Parks that we might ask to make just come out with their chainsaw and make a trail for us to get onto the beach? I do know the rumors are that residents are going to work and clear the boat launch, because the residents to the north that didn't want the berm use that for their boat launch. And so I've heard that they're going to be out there with a work party doing some clearing and all. Of course, they won't be getting any permitting, but I have heard that along the beach. But it would be Whatcom County Parks that would be, and maybe in conjunction with Blaine Birch Bay Park and Rec could help us.
Well, I might be getting myself in trouble, but I do that a lot. It wasn't that long ago in my recent memory that Jerry Larson and I shoved some logs around so his son could get his big kayak down through there. Yeah. So that happens. I mean, it always happens. That's something that
That's Birch Bay.
That's Birch. Well, that's the Puget Sound. I mean, that's the whole Salish Sea. That goes on everywhere. Logs come in, you move them out of the way so you can get your boat through. That's
Well, you do that down at Seagull Cove. The county comes and has to move the logs out of there sometime, right? Down by the village, when that gets all jammed up.
only when it reaches a point where it's impacting the road. We do not do it for Birch Bay Village. They can do their own thing. That's their own property. When it reaches a point where it's damming up and it starts to flood out the road and back up water onto the road, we'll pull out just enough logs to get the water to flow. And I'm one of the people that get all the phone calls from people in the village. Why aren't you coming and taking care of my problem? And unfortunately, it's the same thing. The logs were a gift. Enjoy them. It's not.
Roland, let me get those. Let me get the dates and times you removed stuff here real quick. What was that? I missed that first little bit here.
I'm sorry, Derek. You're breaking up. I can't hear you.
So just I can put a little bit to this. So driftwood in Washington State is governed by DNR. And so the main things that are required for not removing driftwood that they list is that it won't be used for commercial purposes. It's not embedded in the sediment. It's not located in a state park, and removal will not cause environmental harm. So moving the driftwood and you know, changing stuff around is totally legal, and you know, would probably it'd be fine for everyone to do.
Great. Because we have people bringing their pickup trucks and trailers and all and removing driftwood, and they're cutting it up for firewood. And so I think it may be something that begins to take care of itself.
So another question here, when will signage, and we talked a little bit about signage, but maybe you guys can clarify what signage will be installed on the pathway?
Well, can we move, and can we do 4 and 5 at the end? Because this is a big issue, and I have some information and a proposal for the community that I'd like to come back with regard to use of the pathway. So I'd like to address these other issues if I can, which would probably just take a moment.
Sure.
If we can jump down to 6.
Trash bins, do you want to go to 6?
Yeah, so trash bin and mutt stations are not part of Public Works Authority, as we talked about. And I believe the chamber or someone is addressing and normally works with Parks or somebody for porta potties, and it's the same thing for porta potties. So I'll leave that up.
DORALEE is our porta potty and trash lady. She knows all the Birch Bay porta potty and trash news. You're muted, DORALEE. You're muted, DORALEE. Can you tell us when the trash cans? I remember May at some point, but
trash cans come from the health department, actually, Whatcom County Health Department. I work with them, and solid waste, and they come about May 15th, and the trash cans are taken away on September 15th. And we'll have to go have a discussion this year, because the berm obviously is a walking path is going to be used all year. So this may, with the health department, this may, we possibly will have to take a look at this and leave a few trash cans, especially down in the commercial resort area. Porta potties, we haven't decided yet. We're hoping to put the same amount that we have out, and maybe instead of putting them alongside the berm or taking up a parking space or whatever, we probably will put a handicap and two regular ones at the park, on the park property on the other side. So people will have to cross the street there. But otherwise, we'll probably put an extra one at the chamber and see how that goes, whether we have to order more or not. We just don't know the population exactly that will be here this summer. So we'll watch that. And the chamber pays for that, by the way. And it's probably one of our biggest bills. Mm-hmm. It's not fun.
Someday maybe there'll be permanent bathrooms at the park.
Yes. First phase of the development of the park. We're looking forward to that.
The mutt stations, those that were removed for the construction will be put back where they were.
What?
But other than that, I don't even know. I don't know if BB Warm does that. Maybe someone knows that can.
BB Warm does that, and Kathy Berg oversees that. She's the one that fills all the mutt-mitt stations and all. She's queen of the mutt-mitt stations.
And BB Warm does also have their Adopt a Block program where they ask people to clean up the bay and report their hours. We do have a secondary trash can here at the visitor center that is paid for by the Adopt a Block program, and people can put garbage in there that's beach garbage. And we are talking about getting a third garbage can here during the summer because people are so active with that program cleaning up the beach, which is wonderful. So moving on to question number 8, how many handicap spaces will be assigned? How many handicap van accessible spots will be assigned?
There are 2 new spaces that added to South Cottonwood, and there are 2 new spaces south of Harborview, south of Mariners Cove. And then there's 1 new one down from the chamber towards the Brown Cow. What's it called now? The Via Birch Bay, or the restaurant?
Bay Breeze.
Bay Breeze. Okay.
It's been broken off. Somebody's trashed it already.
Oh. Those spaces were added out there, and those are where the handicap spaces are. So that's the location and the number. And as far as a map goes, showing those locations, which is the next question, will be a map showing the parking and trash and the mutt-mitt stations, porta potties. Perhaps it's something that the chamber could do. It's not something that Public Works is planning on doing.
We could probably work on getting a map on our website that would show those locations. We do have our blue maps that are here. I will have to double check those. I don't think that they have garbage stations on them or handicap parking places, but when we get those made again, we can look into having those added. That shouldn't be a hard thing to do.
Excellent.
Number 10 here, with the new seating having, oh, the bench that got tagged, Derek, is there any new plans to put up any kind of surveillance cameras in Birch Bay to keep that kind of activity down?
No, there's no plan for any kind of surveillance cameras. And honestly, even if we did, it would be hard to find a place to catch where and when and all that. You know, a lot of the graffiti is just a crime of opportunity where there's no cars coming, they don't see anybody around, they can jump out and tag it. So it looks like I've started to see that tag another place. Looks like it's the word ghost. So if anybody sees that tag and says ghost somewhere, then let's, report that so that I can document that. That's how the last graffiti subject was caught, was just, repetition of him doing stuff. And yeah, no leads at this point, but we'll go from there, I guess.
Did you see that same tag on that fence leading up Shintaffer?
That's from the original. That's from the original. Yep.
I saw that one yesterday.
Yeah.
Who would be responsible for, because I just hate seeing it left on the brand new bench. I don't think it was in for 48 hours before they tagged the back of it. How do we go about, would that be Public Works, Roland, or would that be Parks? Because that's Whatcom County Park territory there, just to get it covered up?
Yeah, I don't know how we deal with public property being tagged. Jim, do you happen to know? I just by chance just don't know.
I don't know, but I can dig into that.
I normally, so like with the last one with the seawall, what'll happen is I will let my dispatch know and they will contact Public Works, and I'm pretty sure there's a section that of Public Works that handles it.
I would let you know, this is Sharon. I contacted Public Works already a couple days ago, told them all the places that had been tagged. Actually, I called the county executive or something, and the gal that answered the phone was going to pass that all along to Public Works.
Yeah, just to let you know, I do work for Public Works, but that's the maintenance and operation is a different section, and I just not sure who in that section would be responsible for that.
So then the last question that we have here from Carol, it says, it appears that the north end of the bay sustains more damage than the south end, but received minimal construction. Drainage from north neighborhoods is still not functioning correctly. Is there a plan to address that? And I think we've kind of covered that, but maybe more specifically.
Yeah, the construction on the north end, we covered that. And I will say that the last storm that came in, was a similar intensity of the one that took out the entire lane. You know, if you recall, a couple of years ago, we lost all the pavement. This last storm had the potential to do that, and there was nothing, no damage at all. So as far as added construction to the north end, no, there's no additional plans. It's doing exactly what we hoped it to do. But the drainage part, that can I get some clarification? Because I'm not sure what you're referring to on the drainage part.
Just that our culverts going down to the beach are full. They're not draining.
Are you on in a section with private, or where we did some of the construction?
It's I'm up off of Beach Way, so this whole area up here, when you walk through the neighborhood, you see that there's still a lot of, you know, water in the culverts. It's not being absorbed and not draining out properly.
Yeah, that was, that's BB Warm. That's actually one of the main reasons why BB Warm was formed in the first place, was handling all of that. And Craig Olson, I'll get with Craig, and perhaps we can get Craig or Holly. Have they been on for a chamber chat lately? Have you had Craig or Holly on?
No, but that's a great idea.
I think that's something that I'll forward to Holly and Craig, and that's something that they want to address.
I know that BB Warm has done a whole workup on the watershed here, and I'm sure they're very well aware of the system up on top of the hill above North Cottonwood. We do have the conduit that's coming down Beachway that's ready to take that water, but it's just not hooked up back in the lanes. And so the main conduit coming down Beachway is in and ready to go. It's just that hooking up the neighborhoods, it's kind of whatever schedule they're on.
Yeah, and I would just add, Jim here, I would just add that I know that they're focusing on the Harborview area right now. They put in the new outfall as part of the coordination with the berm, so that we could cover that up and get good coordination. And then they plan this September to do the improvements along the Harborview area, so they can capture that drainage and get that going into the outfall. So I think, like DORALEE, you mentioned, it's going to be a prioritization. I thought a couple years ago they did some work at Beachway.
They did a huge amount of work. As a matter of fact, they put in a filter at the top of Beachway, and I believe it was like $30,000 filter that they put in there to filter the water before it came racing down Beachway and into the Birch Bay. So they've done considerable expensive work here. It's just that the backlands from there haven't been hooked up yet. They just have the big ditches.
There's so much to do. And, you know, I think we did 14 new outfalls with the berm. Yeah. So we're hoping that that's going to yield good fruit in the future, that, you know, we can connect or do other things above on the plateau above the Birch Bay Drive that utilize those outfalls, and they're efficient and a good way for the water to get out there.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I'd like to add is Public Works is in charge of implementing those BB Warm projects. But BB Warm is controlled by an advisory committee, and they meet on a regular basis. And I don't have the information in front of me, but speaking, they have an open public session, and going to them and asking about these drainage questions is something that, you know, you should take advantage of. You have representatives of your community who are prioritizing these projects, and so and having been worked with several advisory committees, they really need to hear from the community what your priorities and requests are.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any other questions that we haven't answered already? We could open it up for some questions there, and then
I do want to get back to the use, which
okay.
is something. Is Derek still on?
Derek is here, yes.
Okay. So Derek may have something to add, because I just I worked with our prosecuting attorney Chris Quinn on a couple of these, but we did not do a real deep dive into this whole use of the pathway. When we originally and have talked about building the berm and the promenade, originally, meaning 20 years ago, the shoreline administrator told us that the pathway could only be 4 feet wide, and that was it. And so we said, well, if the pathway can only be 4 feet wide, that could only be for pedestrians. You can't have multi-use on 4 feet. We being Public Works and the community, asked the hearing examiner to approve a 10 to 12 foot wide path. And the hearing examiner granted that request. And so what was constructed is 10 to 12 feet up there, which is the size for a multi-use. When we talk about things like horses riding on the path, there is one county code that talks about horses in Birch Bay, and that was when the BB Stables moved. It was one of the things that was mentioned in there back in 1985. Horses are restricted between May 1st and September 30th. You can't ride your horse along Birch Bay Drive between Point Whitehorn and Shintaffer Road. You can ride your horse everywhere else in the county, but not there during those dates. There was an exemption back in 2011 for horse-drawn carriages, because there was someone that was doing that in the summertime during Birch Bay, so the county council amended that restriction. But I could find no restriction on someone riding their horse on the pathway. So unless the sheriff knows of anything that restricts them, they're allowed to do that. One of the things, unfortunately, we found out as we were going through the RCW with regard to vehicles and what is considered a vehicle, powered wheelchairs, stationary, motorized foot scooters, bicycles are not considered vehicles. And if you didn't have a golf cart zone there, even golf carts are not considered a vehicle. Now that there's a golf cart zone there, it is classified as a vehicle, and they have to meet certain requirements to drive around. But Whatcom County Public Works doesn't have the authority to arbitrarily just say, you can't ride a horse, you can't have anything on there. There isn't anything within our authority to make that restriction. It's up to the authority of the county council. They could add to chapter 10.44 of the county code and add restrictions onto the path. I'm keeping a tally. I have 18 people so far that do not want bicycles on the path. I have 16 people who do not want their grandkids riding their bikes on the street, and they'd rather have them up on the path. And so, if bikes are illegal, they're illegal. You can't just say if you're under 6, you get to ride on the path, and if you're over 6, you can't. I'll let Derek, you can address that and go around and ask for ID of little children. Good luck with that. So what we're coming down to is virtually everything is allowed on the path. Horses, scooters, wheelchairs, mopeds, bicycles. You can read through RCW 4604, which is what includes vehicles and what does not include vehicles. And that's what would restrict as far as traffic, our regulations go. So unless Derek has any other information of something I'm missing, we really do need to get this in front of the county council to establish what the community wants to have as far as use on the path. And I'll let Derek answer that.
Yeah, so you're right with the horse code. That code is, if people want to look that up, it's chapter 10.44 in the Whatcom County Code. There's basically, you talk about RCWs. For anyone who doesn't know, that's called the Revised Code of Washington, and that's done by the legislature for all of our laws, like criminal law, traffic law, all that. There's also things called WAC codes, which are Washington Administrative Code, WAC. So there's a subsection of that as well. That's 308-330-555. I can write that in the chat. Oh, you're faster than me, Danielle. So that is talking about riding on sidewalks. So Bellingham, the city of Bellingham, does something where they have listed a certain area of their downtown as the central business district. And in that district, WAC code prohibits people from riding on sidewalks. Birch Bay doesn't have that. So technically riding on sidewalks is fine. So as far as all that's concerned, basically the sheriff's office will just enforce what's written by law. And of course, with safety in mind. So anyone who's riding a horse or bicycles have to yield to pedestrians. I will say that you mentioned a moped. There is an RCW that talks about that, and that's RCW 4661710. And that talks about how you cannot ride a moped on a sidewalk. So the sheriff's office won't allow that, of course. If somebody's riding a moped, you'd want to call that in.
Derek, I do want to mention the path is not a sidewalk. It does not have a curb gutter. It is not a 4 to 5 foot concrete path section. It's not a separated sidewalk by definition under the code. And that's where it really gets sticky. So if you call the sheriff and it's something you don't like, they need a code that they can cite the person for breaking. And what I'm letting you know is this is built as an interurban trail, and those WACs talks about sidewalks, and any attorney on the other side is going to argue this is not a sidewalk, it's an interurban trail, and your code doesn't apply to that. And so I didn't want to, sorry for interrupting you,
No.
I didn't want people to have the impression that we have as much control over this because it's outside the right of way.
Yeah.
It's not adjacent, it's not appurtenant, and it does not have curb gutter or a break from it. And so
Are you talking about the definition RCW? I don't know if you have a chance to look this up, but it's 46.04.540. And that one talks about between a curb line or a lateral lines of a roadway and the adjacent property set aside and intended for the use of pedestrians or such portion of private property parallel and in proximity to a public highway and dedicated to the use by pedestrians. So I see what you mean, where it doesn't, maybe not officially was declared as a sidewalk, but I think that, letter of the law versus spirit of the law, the sheriff's office would definitely in the interest of public safety would enforce that as a sidewalk. And if someone's attorney wants to argue that in court, then they can do that. But as far as the sheriff's office is concerned, no mopeds or motorized vehicles will be allowed to ride on that area.
Except
and that's
wheelchairs.
Public. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Except wheelchairs.
Oh yes, of course, wheelchairs. Yep.
Yeah. So mopeds and golf carts, we're putting brakes or bollards and rocks and things like that to try to keep that from happening. And I certainly agree with Derek that mopeds don't belong on there.
Yeah.
What I'm suggesting though is to give the sheriff a break and let's have a public process, define what the community wants. Public Works doesn't have an opinion other than make it safe. I don't think the sheriff's office has an opinion other than make it safe.
Yeah.
We want safety for everyone, and we want it to be enjoyable for everyone. Mm-hmm. So it's the community, and the community needs to make a decision. So what I'm authorized to offer today is an assistance with the chamber or some other community effort out there to have a public meeting to to talk about the things that Derek and I were just talking about. Here's what the laws say. And yes, we can argue one thing or we can argue another. Well, let's not argue. Why don't we just put together something in the Whatcom County Code that makes it a misdemeanor or whatever is appropriate for that type of violation. And if you all do not want horses on the promenade, make it illegal. If you do not want bicycles on there, make it illegal. I will argue I don't want my grandkids pedaling around down by the cars who we were just talking about, who don't give a rip about the speed they're going. And I would rather have a bicycle going next to me than have my grandkids down by the road. And I also think the ones that are going pretty fast are probably down on the road in the cruise shoulder because people aren't walking down there anymore. So it's a lot easier to ride their bike on the road. But at any rate, again, I no longer live out there. It's really not my opinion that matters. So what I would offer is to have a public meeting to discuss all of this. I've offered my time. I will offer my time to help draft a ordinance to give to the council on your behalf and have them hold a public hearing. And the people who took the time and effort and wherewithal to run for office, who represent you, can make a decision, institute the law that you all want, and that allows Derek and fellow officers to enforce something that's very clear, and you don't have to argue with an attorney, where it just says, this is not. Then we would be able to put up some signage, again, whatever is appropriate, that would address the use. We don't want to go up there and make it up just because Jim and I don't think that bicycles should be on the road, so we're going to allow them to be on the path. Well, it's not up to us. So that's what I'm going to recommend. And I will leave it up to you to help. We can help get that together and move forward.
And I would just, Jim Karcher with Public Works, I would just add that you might see how things go here as we get into spring and early summer and see what the uses are on the berm. You know, let this thing get some use and establish itself and see what kind of uses that are tolerable and others that are intolerable.
We have a lot of electric bikes happening out here now, which is sort of a new phenomenon, and they go pretty fast. We have electric longboards. So we have a lot of that kind of thing, and I guess we'll have to decide whether that's motorized or not. You know, I can see, I went through the whole golf cart hearings and all, and they're not very much fun, and it takes a long time, but I guess we'll do it again, Roland.
And I guess I'll just jump in real quick with the motorized bicycles too. With considering a bicycle versus a moped, is if it has pedal power, so you can pedal it, then the law considers it a bicycle versus a moped that you'd have to Fred Flintstone your way if it wasn't turned on. So.
DORALEE, you know that we found out that those motorized skateboards tend to take care of themselves, a la my husband who got one and at
broke his collarbone.
43 years old, breaks his collarbone, and
we don't want that.
That went away pretty quickly. So
we don't want them running into somebody else and breaking their collarbone.
Very true, very true. Does anybody else have any other questions for Roland or Jim or for Derek regarding the berm?
I have a couple that I've written down here. In regards to bicycles again, if the bicycles stay on the road, especially down in the commercial resort area, then the lane now, the bicycle lane or enhanced shoulder goes off into the swale. And several of my friends that are my age going like, I can't balance my bicycle enough to not go in the swale. So I was wondering, Roland, if when they do the road again, will they put a little lip up? Or I know curb, I don't know about a curb, whether that would help at all, but will there be any delineation between the very small enhanced shoulder and the swale?
I'll take
We
that
can
one.
see ourselves going head first into the swale. Not only us oldsters, but the youngsters too.
You know, the only problem, DORALEE, with the lip up is that that swale is designed to treat road runoff before it gets into the bay.
I get it.
So probably the answer is no.
Yeah, I get it. And I know that's one of the ecology things that we wanted to have happen. Yeah.
Birch Bay, but that's all right. So I had my full-on viper.
The second question I had in talking to you, Roland, the other day, you were talking about some traffic calming, maybe down in that area. There would maybe be an advisory in the summer months to, you know, take your foot off the gas and maybe not go 25.
Doing 2 appointments.
If I could just remind everybody, if you're not actively asking a question, if you could mute your microphone, we're getting some feedback here.
Yeah.
Anyway, some kind of a calming advisory information, because, you know, we know that Birch Bay Drive all the way along in the summer, spring and summer, is a very conflicted arterial, especially down there, you know, would be south of Harborview. Will there be any kind of, you know, traffic calming that is able to happen in that area?
Well, I've talked to Jason with the traffic crew, and there's a few advisory signs that can be put up, but again, they're advisory. And one of the things that we Public Works decided is to get through and get the berm built. And when the paving project is going to happen, which could be next year or the year after, and I don't know, Jim, if it's set for sure, but in the next couple of years, we're going to be repaving the entire time. At that time is when we were going to look at size of fog line striping, whether or not the park has developed enough to where there's a crosswalk there, or should there even be a crosswalk there. At that time, we were going to discuss all that. So Jason and I walked. It's an urban setting. It actually has one of the highest densities in Whatcom County, including the city of Bellingham, with all the condos there on that one street. So it's certainly warranted, but Jason also warned that putting up 500 signs means you'll read none.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the problems. Because of the traffic flow, there isn't any place to really put bollards or anything like you do in like downtown Bellingham, where there's cross streets, and you can kind of pinch those intersections down a little bit, which naturally slow people down. What we don't want to do is add those points of it's just a place to crash. So it's very difficult. We do have a couple of ideas, and we're beating them around as far as what is probably the best thing to do, but that will be addressed at the paving project. And Jim, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
I really don't, Roland. We're just getting going. I'm going to leave Roland's statement about when we're going to be out there as 2022, 23. We're planning for 2022, but I can tell everybody that we are down a number of staff people right now due to retirements or changes. And during the COVID pandemic, it is tough to get positions filled. I think people are hunkering down, and there's not a lot of mobility in the workplace. So we are struggling to keep up with our workload.
And I'll jump in with traffic. I mean, obviously the sheriff's office is aware of that stretch, and I've worked traffic there. And I have the big white car with the light bar, but the traffic unit with the slick top and the different colors will be sitting out there a little bit more. And if I'm out there just to slow them and the traffic's out there to write tickets, then hopefully we can, let people know that we're taking it seriously.
Thank you.
Well, do we have any other questions? We're here at 9:09. We really appreciate the hard work of Whatcom County, and we really appreciate the hard work of Granite Construction. It does look beautiful out here.
I have a question. I put in the group chat.
Oh, sorry.
He was going to talk about signage. Did I miss everything about signage? Like parking and no, you know, there was all kinds of signs up here before, daytime hours of parking, park use, et cetera, in front of the parking lots. Is that going to get replaced? And are they going to put a no idling on one of those signs? Or no RV parking when they parallel, or they, you know, parallel park across 7 angle parking spots?
Yeah, Jim Karcher, Public Works. I don't think there's going to be any no idling placards added, but any existing signs that were there should be replaced as part of the contract. And then, like Roland indicated, any new signage that we're going to add, I think we're going to be a little bit reserved on the time frame for that, and wait till we have this public meeting to decide what will those signs say for restriction on the path.
Oh, I'm just concerned about like the parking lot signs, all the parking lot signs that were here. Are they coming back?
You know, Sharon, I think they are, but I'll have to check on that with you. I think what I'm trying to say in a general way is that if there were signs there before, I think that those signs will be replaced by the contractor before they get out of, removed from the site.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
And as well, if you would like the county council to make that a no idling zone, that it's something that they can do.
I'm going to put it in my email.
Okay, I know out in, our parking lot is a no idling zone. I don't know if it's by resolution or by ordinance, but that's something else we can look at doing. And if it does require a county council action, that's something we can add to the whole path conversation as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. Sorry, I missed that in the
That's
chat
okay.
there. All right. Well, if we don't have any more questions, thank you for joining us with our very last Coffee with the Contractor. We appreciate you joining us.
I'd like to say thank you to Jim and Roland for all your hard work. This has just been an incredible opportunity for all those that live in Whatcom County to come out to Birch Bay and enjoy a nice stroll along the new pathway. And we were walking there last night. It wasn't particularly a nice evening, but it's amazing how many people are already using it and enjoying it and greeting their neighbors. And it's going to add a tremendous community aspect as we meet our friends and neighbors out there enjoying the beauty of the area that we live in. And I know it's been a long, long process. Kathy Berg and I have come on board since the steering committee in 2000, realizing that this implementation really needed to happen for our community. But it wasn't until Jack Louse and Public Works came together and decided to make this happen. And we're very grateful. It's going to change who we are in our community. I think it's going to change the economic development out here. And I also want to remind you that on August 21st, we are going to have a ribbon cutting ceremony for the Berm. Chamber will be in charge of that, working with Public Works and all. So circle that date on your calendar, because we're going to have some other fun things that are going to happen on that day.
Well, DORALEE, Jim Karcher with Whatcom County, I would say we sincerely appreciate your compliments, and there are a lot of people to thank for this. Roland probably most especially, but Cody Swan and Kyle Anderson and Marty Jones and some of the, Doug Burkhart, there's a lot of people that were involved with this. And, they're the ones that really deserve the credit. And I appreciate the community being patient with us because, one of the things that we've started talking about here as these coffee with contractors have moved on is that, let us finish this project. And I know that there's a lot of needs that we couldn't address as part of the project. And I guess what I'd like to say is I appreciate the community understanding that, somewhere you have to just say, this is all we can do right now, because things can, when you have a contract, it can't continue to grow. It has to stay within its budget. When you have permits that control what you're allowed to do on the beach, you can't just take undertake activities that aren't allowed. So that's kind of some of the things that we're working with, and we appreciate the community bearing with us on that, and maybe we can finish some of these things up like we discussed today, where they're either handled through BB Warm or additional public outreach on the use, or some of those features. So thanks.
Great, thank you.
And I'd like to say that this is the last coffee with the contractor, but I'm not going anywhere. Jim's not going anywhere. You have the chamber chat on a regular basis. We're hoping to go back to normal, because I really do miss attending the chamber luncheon and giving you guys updates on what's going to happen, whether the berm's going to ever get built or not, which is what I did for 20 years. And then it would be nice to be able to have these conversations with regard to use, signage, the additional, the drainage issues. Yeah, the berm's is built, the beach is restored, but that doesn't mean there isn't a lot to be done, and that's not a lot we're doing out there. For those of you who live on the other end of Birch Bay Drive down in Jackson Road, we're rebuilding the Jackson Road Bridge, and there's a large community outreach part of that as well. And so you'll be seeing me at some of the chamber meetings with James Lee, or Ben, who are the engineers involved with the bridge. And so this isn't your only opportunity to talk to Public Works. We're around, and anytime I'm invited, I'll attend. Likewise, if you have a community group that have a series of questions, which I've done over the past years, I come out there on the weekends and can meet with your group, because I know a lot of people are working during the week. And so to help address those things, I can come out on a Saturday afternoon. We can go walk out in front of your condos and talk about your issues. I can't promise we'll get it done, but I can promise that we'll hear what your concerns are and do the best we can to get it addressed.
Great. I want to tell you too, Roland, I was out walking last night and it was a little too dark to take pictures, but the berm grass is growing. There's new green shoots coming up, and I'm going to take some pictures and send them to you so you know that it's happening out here with the berm grass.
And the chamber chat that Roland mentioned, we do on the third Thursday of every month. You can find the link to that call on our website, birchbaychamber.com. Please feel free to email me. My email is director@birchbaychamber, and I can point your emails in the right direction generally too. So
Danielle, Jim Karcher, Public Works. If I get answers to a couple questions, I put some action items. Can I send those? I'll probably have Cody send them to you regarding the tagging removal and the existing signs. I'll just send those, and if you can kind of post those or something.
Absolutely.
That would be great.
Mm-hmm. We utilize our website for that, Facebook, and we also do a weekly newsletter, the Birch Bay Buzz. It goes out every Wednesday. And if you want to get added to that distribution list, just shoot me an email and I'll get you added on there as well.